Today we are doing an oil and filter change on this F90 M5 competition. If you're coming from an F10 M5, either the base model or the competition, the oil change process is very similar. The differences being that the drain plug is somewhat different on the F90 and the volume of oil is greater. So we'll jump straight in and get started. We're now under the vehicle. I have removed the oil fill cap and placed it aside. Let's look at the two oil drain points on the bottom of the motor. This is the main drain plug, and this is effectively the oil pan, which is a cast piece. If you get a chance to look at an engineering diagram of this pan and the two internal pumps and how they work in concert, it's really interesting. And over here we have the oil filter housing. It also has a drain point on it as well. I'll come back to this in a moment. So over here, I'm not sure if this mark is from the factory or if perhaps the dealer that did the first break-in oil service, if they did that. Nevertheless, on the F10 M5, this was a 17mm standard socket. On this vehicle, it is an 8mm Allen head. Just be aware of that. I do not remember the torque specification on when this is replaced, but with this alignment mark, that will help. Over here, this is actually a T55 Torx, and this is the same setup that the F10 M5 had, although this center drain point was a metal, it was aluminum on plastic. This is plastic on plastic. This is a T55 Torx, and you can remove this first, allow the oil to drain out, and then remove the remainder of the housing without taking an oil bath. I like that part of it. But first up, we're going to remove the primary drain plug, and I'm going to actually pull this and go away for a little while and just let this drain, and we'll come back and do the oil filter side. Picking up where we left off, oil has been drained from the crankcase and the drain plug has been replaced with a new crush washer. Over on the oil filter housing side, I have removed the oil filter housing and the filter itself. You can see there's a little bit of drippage, but for the most part, that's cleaned up. I'll wipe up that remaining residue before reinstalling. But let's talk about the filter kit that you will need. Here it is, and the part number is exactly the same as the F10 M5. So if you're a DIYer and you're moving from an F10 to an F90 and you have an oil filter or two left over, the part number is exactly the same. What do you get in the kit? The kit includes the filter itself, and if you don't want to use the genuine BMW article, which this is, Mann makes a filter for this. It is part number HU8007Z. Again, that's HU8007Z, but this is the genuine BMW filter. In the kit, you're going to receive a number of washers. So the big copper O-ring, this is actually the one that came off the vehicle. The new one is obviously on the drain plug, but this is the larger of the two copper O-rings. The smaller one you won't use. It's not used for this application. It's included in this kit, but not used. The small rubber O-ring, it actually goes on this cap that goes on the bottom of the filter housing. I'll talk about that in a moment. And then the large O-ring goes around the filter housing itself. Now, what is that cap for? Well, that is one of the nice features that I had on my F10 M5, although the cap was aluminum into plastic. This is plastic on plastic, and it allows you to drain the filter housing before removing the filter housing so you don't get a flood of oil all over you and everything else. I like that. That's a very nice touch. Now, oddly, I've seen some of the early F90 M5s, the pre-LCI models especially, they did not have this. They had a traditional filter housing without this this space, and it's unfortunate that they did it that way, but they've gone with this. It makes it a much nicer. And you're going to need a pick tool, something like this, to get the rubber O-rings off. You're going to need a T55 Torx for that center plug on the filter housing. And to get the filter housing off itself, you're going to need a 36mm socket. Again, a traditional BMW oil filter socket is not going to work for this. I have one of those. I actually have a couple, but those are basically the parts and pieces that is needed to do this operation. I'm going to put the filter and everything back together, the housing, the new filter, and reinstall that, and we will move on. We're back once again very quickly to take a look at the filter housing reassembled. So we've got the new large O-ring, have the new filter element, and the element actually snaps in place. To say it snaps in place is an understatement. It's a loud clunk when you install this, and it does make it, it's a very firm fit, so it makes it difficult to remove this on the back side of the process when you've got oil all over your hands and all over the filter and all of that. Interestingly enough, the black O-ring that I thought would go to this center piece, it doesn't fit. From this kit, you're going to have the small copper washer and the rubber O-ring. Those are for different applications, but I have a set of O-rings, so thus I was actually several sets. So I was able to provision an O-ring for replacement of this one, but it's not included in the kit, which is unfortunate. I don't know why they do that, but that is the scoop. This is the original oil filter, the original large crush washer, and everything is cleaned up above, so we're going to go ahead and reinstall this. You can spin it on by hand, should not be a problem. Once it starts to grab, then you'll want to go to that 36mm socket to take it the rest of the way in. I'll do that now. Two quick comments before moving on. The filter housing has been reinstalled. It's fully tightened. Again, I really like this center cap and the ability to remove that to drain oil before removing the entire housing. It prevents a mess and oil running all over the place. I like that. However, I wish BMW had maintained the fluting around the outer edge of the filter housing, which would allow you to use a traditional filter wrench or socket, in this case, one like this. And the reason I say that is because it's possible, if you get overzealous or impatient, that you could break the housing. Again, this is a 36mm socket that goes on this. I take my time, I'm patient, I'm gentle, but it is possible that you could crack this. Less likely if you're using the socket over the entire housing that you would have a problem there. So enough on that. Last comment. The trap door here is missing. It rotates in place and stays in place. It's plastic. I assume the dealer left that off, and there's actually a trap door for this side as well, but I've never seen it on an M5. I've seen these, but not this. I've got this on order to replace that. I'm assuming the dealer who did the M-specific oil service, whatever that was, 1,400, 1,500 miles, they left it off. I'll get that taken care of. We'll move up top. Okay, folks, we are under the hood, and I have added 10.5 quarts of oil to the engine with a filter change. The engine calls for 10.6 quarts of oil, so it's hard to get right up to that 10th. So I go just a little bit under, and then I run the engine, get it warmed up, run the oil check process, and if I'm off by a little bit, then I can add a 10th or maybe whatever I need to do to get up to the maximum level on the oil check process. I will do that. And of course, these vehicles do not have dipsticks, so you have to use that process and follow it. Mobil 1 0W40 synthetic is my oil of choice. Use whatever brand you want. If you choose Motul, the BMW brand, Redline, if you want to splurge and spend extra to get that, whatever oil you like, use it. I prefer 0W40 in literally everything I own, from rotting lawnmower, pressure washer, standalone generator, my snowblower, and our other BMWs, including the one Mercedes that we own. I use this oil in everything. It's super versatile, and I'm not one that believes you need to run a different oil in the wintertime or a different grade. I don't subscribe to that philosophy whatsoever. This is it. This covers everything you need, and if you're good about keeping up with maintenance and you're doing oil changes, you're not going to have any problem. I've certainly never had an engine failure due to oil or running the wrong kind of oil or... Okay, we're coming up on the end of the engine oil measuring procedure. Let's see where we stand. With 10.5 quarts of oil in the system, it's showing at max. Again, 10.6 is the recommended level. However, it looks like we're good to go, so we're going to wrap this up.